It's funny. I never could have comics as a kid. My dad was a serious guy, and he'd say no comics in the house. So the only time I could ever read comics is when I went over to somebody else's house, and they had a more permissive parent who they could have comics. So I used to sneak over to my friend's house, and I'd go read Mad Magazine, Perish the Thought. And I love the Crow versus Crow series because my dad was a spy professionally. He worked for the government. And I would laugh and read the Black Crow versus the White Crow in Mad Magazine and laugh about my dad and no comics. And that as I got older, I mean, comics went up in value like everything else did. And it had a huge peak and came down, and that with the Marvel being bought by Disney and all these comic characters starting to appear in Disney, there really was a second interest in comics, but it became more refined, and the anime art that came out in Japan came into comics, and that reinvigorated a whole younger group with new characters in comics. And so you'll see a lot of people younger than me by 20 years or more that are really interested in comics. An old Donald Duck isn't necessarily going to be worth a lot of money. An old Spider-Man, you start raising a price. So you converge age with the popularity of the character and the duration of the character, and you look for condition. Condition is very key. So if you get a Spider-Man #1, that's going to be a winner. Then if the condition of that comic was better, I don't know, you're talking $50,000, $100,000 or more. But because it's not great condition, it's $5,000, but that's going to be a score for everybody. You look for the characters, as I said, so even if it's Spider-Man in a later, but it introduced a new character that was popular, then somebody's going to have that comic book, because everybody wants to have the first Silver Surfer when it was introduced, or the first edition Silver Surfer when it went out to its own character. So some of the stuff you have to get a little bit of knowledge, but age and condition is a great place to start if you don't know anything. And that's not to say some of the new comic books aren't worth money, but I also look for volume 1, #1. That's usually a hit. Now it may be a $25 hit on a comic book that's generally $1, or it may be a $100 hit, or it may be in the thousands, depending on who the character is. I mean, I picked up some small comic series at a flea market in Maine, and I got a whole bundle of them. And it's something I've never heard of that's really obscure, but they were #1 in the series, and I was selling them for $100 a piece, and I had a whole big, I don't know, whatever they shipped them in. It was a lot of them, but I dribbled them out on eBay over time.
People were buying them?
Oh yeah, $100 a piece, no questions, quick. They were in good shape. Jump in carefully when you go into comics, and understand that you may have an undiscovered pile and they're still coming out of attics, but be careful and understand condition, age, character, and then do a value perception. But be careful, and also make sure you look on the inside and that all the pages are in there when you jump in. If you want to collect things, then collect things that resonate back to you. For me, early Spider-Man, early X-Men, those were a fun time. And so I like to go back and collect some of that stuff and even read it again. I know one of my sons went and read all the Spider-Man and Incredible Hulk comics that I brought out, that he was just having a blast reading them. And you tell him to be careful, don't bend the pages, and condition is very sensitive to comics, and the paper gets very fragile. It was made cheaply. So you just got to be careful and enjoy what you learn and enjoy what you do.